everybody? Welcome back to The Climb. I'm here joined with my theater director for Pacifica, just great person, Miss Angela Ward, everybody. It is great to have you on, Miss Ward. Like, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Jaelin. I'm so excited to be here and so excited to see you.
Of course. So we're just going to start off with some intro questions. So how did you come across the impact of acting?
You know, just to be honest, it was honestly a calling on my life from about the age of 3. My mom took me to see Aladdin, a production of Aladdin, and just the power of theater is just so transformative, and the different worlds that you can experience and live in through the mediums of film and TV and stage are life-changing. It's like riding in a time capsule or changing history. Really, you get the opportunity to change what might have happened in the course of history. So yeah, it's just living a dream, but a good dream.
For sure. Did you act throughout school?
I did. I was someone that, they say you don't want to arrive in heaven with your body intact. You just want it to be used up, and total. And that's the way I've always lived. So a really good actor has to be a really good liver of life. And so I did a variety of things in high school. I mean, I played sports. I did student government. My priority was absolutely theater. But I allowed myself to have lots of different friendships and lots of different experiences, because that ultimately makes us better people and better artists. So that was definitely my focus and my priority in season. But I participated in other things too.
What were some of the highlights of you acting in high school and whatnot?
I think, doing Shakespeare is an amazing experience, because the works of Shakespeare really truly have impacted world civilizations in the past 500 years. I mean, including the American founding. So those words have such impact. And when you cut your teeth on Shakespeare, when you can act Shakespeare, you can act anything. And so I was just drawn to it. My big favorite was Lady Macbeth, and wonderful monologues, landed me some scholarships and things. And so I got some trips, and I got to perform in front of huge audiences and, a couple thousand people. And when you do that, it just continues to feed that desire. So yeah, I think that I love Shakespeare. Definitely that in high school was really fun for me. Just that language, the more you read it, the more you just jump into it fearlessly. They say it grows neurons in your brain, and it really does, because you really start to understand it. And then you have more words to use in your arsenal. So yeah.
For sure, yeah.
I always loved Shakespeare.
Yeah. So did you know that you've always wanted to act professionally, like you said, from 3 years old? Did you want to do it professionally, or did you always like going to productions and stuff like that?
You know what? I will be completely transparent and say that in 6th grade, when we graduated from 6th grade and we had to say what we saw ourselves doing, I think I may have said dancing instead of acting, but I really meant musical theater, or, I really have always wanted to act first. But yes, there's an expression in the acting world that if you can be happy doing anything else, then you must do it. You must choose that other thing. If you could be happy doing anything else besides acting, then don't act professionally, because it is extraordinarily difficult. It's so much rejection. I mean, you have to be prepared. The ratio for commercial acting is 30 auditions for 1 job. And it's hard. That rejection is hard, but I have no regrets. I loved it. I lived my dream. And then when I found my calling was changing. I found a career path that allowed me to continue what I love doing, but expand my mission to include sort of bivocational stuff.
Yeah, for sure. What was like your favorite production you ever were in?
Oh my gosh. Well, modern theater is really fun, and contemporary theater is really fun. I love all types of it. So if we're talking shows, that's really hard. I will tell you, I love Shakespeare, but I auditioned 6 times for a chorus line, and got it. And so that was amazing. And actually a fun story is that 2 weeks before we opened, you just don't miss rehearsal. You don't miss, it doesn't matter. And so I woke up in sort of excruciating pain, but you don't miss rehearsal. So I went to rehearsal and I stayed in rehearsal until I couldn't stand up anymore. And then I was still on stage and rehearsal was going on, but I was folding over. I was like in this bent position. It looked like I was doing yoga or something. And the director said, "Okay, Angela, you can step out." And so I laid on the floor in the lobby, and I was having an acute appendicitis. And so I went straight to the hospital and had my appendix out. But it was so sweet because the emergency room doctor actually came to see me in the show. And 3 weeks later, I was back. I only missed the opening week. It was a 6-week run. So, 2 weeks after my surgery, I was back on stage. And
Wow.
And you could see my staples through my little dance leotard, but I was there because I loved it. And I auditioned 6 times for that part, and I was going to do that part. So that's a very fun memory.
For sure. What was your plan like post college? Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. I wanted to go to New York, and I did go to New York. And we just have to remember that life has, our theme in the arts department of Pacifica is shipwrecks of life this year. And so we have to realize that I'm a believer. And so I know that God has a plan A for me, and how that plan is achieved might look differently than I conceive it to be. So I wanted to go to Juilliard in New York rather than a 4-year college. But my parents felt strongly that I need to go to a 4-year college to have that sort of collegiate experience, which I did. And I'm thrilled that I did, because I met my husband there in a production of Richard III, I might add. But anyway, so long and short, I did live in New York. I did pursue my dream. I made my living as an actor for 10 years, which is something I'm proud of. That doesn't mean I never waited tables in that time period or did other weird survival jobs, but I wasn't alone, because most of the service industries in New York are populated by performers. So that was kind of a fun community to be into.
For sure. How did you get your start in early beginnings of your acting career?
Well, there are, one of the benefits, one of the things that college offers, right, is auditions to professional summer stock companies or to graduate schools. And you really need an in. You just are going to end up needing an in the industry, whether you're on the East Coast or the West Coast. So it's a matter of making these great connections. So ultimately, to get your equity card, so there's film, TV, and theater stage. So in theater, I was cast in a show that was seen by a director that wanted to cast me in another show at his equity theater. And so he gave me my equity card, which was amazing, because then I was a member of the Professional Acting Union. And it's a really double-edged sword, because you have to get equity points, meaning you have to act in equity shows to get your equity card. But you really can't get cast in an equity show unless you're equity. It's very hard, and it's a delicate sort of dance. So what typically happens to actors is they will work years accumulating little points at equity approved theaters and then finally get to join the acting union, which is where you can make a career out of it. But I was lucky in that I didn't have to do that. This director saw my show and gave me my equity card. Also, some graduate programs will give you your equity card. But if you want to be on Broadway or you want to make a living doing stage stuff, you have to have that card. But not until you've got the training to know that you can stand on your own professionally. So I didn't get it until I was in my 20s. It was before graduate school, but after college. So the timing was right for me. And then as far as like television and film go, you again getting that agent, making the connection. So, and I got an agent through a director that thought I had something, and so he introduced me to this agent. So honestly, there are connections that you'll make. And I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. You can see I love.
You're good. No, it was super interesting.
But here's the truth, though, is that I will tell you again. You can't plan things out, or when you plan them, just be aware it's, sort of like a log ride or something. You're going to get totally splashed around. I've been really happily married for 34 years, but the first 3 years of our marriage, we really ended up living apart because of my acting career. And so my husband is and was the dream of my life and my best friend and my favorite person, but he knew that there's this thing inside of you. And I think you feel it, Jaelin, so I think you know what I'm talking about. But it's it's like the thing in you, and you have to do it, and if you don't do it, you're not going to be, you just know you got to do it. And so he was really supportive of my career. And so and there are lots of people like that in that career field. Yeah. So it wasn't, I got married and then we didn't live together, but we were very much together. And our marriage for 7 years was really like that. Mm-hmm. But I've spent, the remaining 28 or whatever living with him. So, and with no regrets. That's the important thing, not to go for your dreams. Oh, it's that poem. The saddest words are, "It might have been," and I never have to wonder that.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah. Did you try at all to go into movies or TV, or was it just on stage the whole time?
No, I definitely did. I did TV and I did movies. And the thing is, I hate to age myself, but life changed so dramatically with the internet, shall we say. And so I was done I was transitioning into directing by the 90s. So I'm not someone that you can necessarily just Google in, but I worked throughout the 80s and 90s. And so I did a little bit of daytime drama. I did a lot of commercials, TV commercials, which are amazing because, you can get royalties, which is just fabulous. That's how I became SAG eligible, Screen Actors Guild, because I was cast. It was during the Academy Awards. I can't remember what year, but it was a commercial, a national commercial during the Academy Awards. And I was just an extra and I got upgraded. So, woo! So it was cool. Yeah, my face ends up, it was a cool commercial. It was with Donald Duck, and it was like Donald Duck and Daisy on the red carpet, and it was a car commercial. But anyway, so my face, if your face shows for a particular length of time, then bam, you get into the union. So anyway, so I definitely wanted to do that. And as I said, I'm grateful for it. I wasn't, when I had a group of friends, and I was one that worked steadily and didn't become famous, but I have two friends who I'm sure you wouldn't have heard of, but they did become famous. They did movies very successfully and were had their own series, were part of a series and stuff. And so they were really successful. They just took a different path. And so, yeah, I think it just depends on what you want for your life. And so, yeah. So I definitely do all of it. Do all of it.
Yeah. So what was your like first professional acting role or job?
Okay, gosh, let me think. Okay, my first one. Oh gosh. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a little bit of a sad tale, but anyway, my first job. So it was senior year in college, and so we were doing what they're called the SETCs. They have NETCs, but it was the Southeastern Theater Conference. And there's also a Northeastern and a Western. So what happens is professional repertory theaters will come and they will cast you. You'll do a 2 or 3 minute audition. You sing, you do a couple of monologues, and then they'll call you back. And it's at these giant convention centers and hotels. And so you go around and thousands of people are there trying to land that first thing. And so I was really fortunate. I had, some good opportunities. And one of them was for this amazing show. And it's by a guy named Tennessee Williams, who's a super famous playwright.
Yeah.
It's called Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And the cat was this woman named Maggie. And they said cat because she was, So I was up for Maggie, and I could have had Maggie. And I did something really stupid. I've done 2 stupid things that I will just share with you. I've done many more, but career stupid things that I've never gotten over. But I was afraid to take that job because it was at a theater in Missouri, and I didn't want to lose my husband. We were engaged. And so I worked at the Smoky Mountain Passion Play as Lady Pilot that summer after college. Instead of doing Cat on a Hot Tin Roof at a really reputable theater in Missouri, I went and did outdoor drama in Tennessee. Yeah. And do I regret that? Yes. Yes. My husband would still have loved me. We would have been together. And instead, I let that opportunity go because I thought, I have the rest of my life to do that. Guess what? Never got an opportunity to do that role again. So, but I will tell you what happened in that outdoor drama. I met a guy who had already been cast in the season of a really well-established repertory theater. And he and I became friends. He gave my name to the artistic director at that theater. They had an opening. I drove 1,000,000 hours, auditioned, and got the job. And so in a way, that drama landed me my next gig, which was I lasted 2 years at this amazing theater. And I got to do, year-round full-time actress and I think I was 21, so right out of college. So the bad news is I didn't get to do the great part. I did an outdoor drama with peanut butter blood, and it was, really something. But it lined up my next job for me. So be the kindest person you can, love other people, and you'll make these connections that help you. I mean, God puts people in your path for many reasons.
So, did you ever find yourself discouraged from not finding roles or parts?
Yes. 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 It gets really, really discouraging. I mean, really discouraging. Yes, I will tell you, I was up for an NBC movie of the week. I don't even think they have those anymore. But anyway, it was an NBC movie of the week. Is NBC still around? Is there NBC still?
I think NBC is still around, yeah.
I don't watch much TV. So anyway, but I was like down for it was a movie of the week. It was for NBC. And I'd been called back and called back and called back. So it was like down. I was down to the wire. It was me, one or two others, and it was a very big deal. So I got the script, and I was going through the script, and there was a word I wasn't sure how to pronounce. Because it was about it was one of those like futuristic things, and it was like, is the water safe? We have to make it potable. And so I called my husband, and I said, I don't know how to pronounce this word. Is it potable or potable? And remember, we didn't, phones weren't like they are now, and computers aren't like they are now. And so he told me the wrong pronunciation And so that, guess who didn't get the part? Because when it comes down to the very end, you just never know. It means you could do the role, or they could do the role, or there are like 2 or 3 people that could do this role, and it's going to be some tiny little, not technicality, but detail that makes the difference. Because I looked less professional, that I didn't figure out or just look myself, how to pronounce this word. But yes, I think I've told you, Jaelin, I ended up one Thanksgiving, I was at LaGuardia Airport in New York, inside this giant turkey suit, crying my eyes out, dancing. They hired me to dance at LaGuardia Airport to a brass band to entertain the Thanksgiving crowds. And I was just crying, and my friend, by the way, we worked together at this restaurant. I'm dancing in the turkey suit, and she is in a movie with Robert De Niro. I don't know if you've heard him, but he's really old.
I definitely have, yeah.
So, and we both work at the same restaurant. So it's really interesting because it's a feast or a famine. Things are great when you're working, and then when you're not working, you're unemployed, which is just part of it. And it's, but yes, it gets really hard. But actors, but the thing is, it's such a great community. The more professional, the more you rise professionally, the people that you're with, there isn't the same, like this competition or the weird ego stuff. There's a real sense of community where we're all in it together. Let's support each other. Let's help each other. It's just really a more humble thing. It's hard in the lower echelons when you first start out. I can't tell you how many times I've stood in line for a casting call, or I've done extra work where the person next to you is playing like a status game saying, I'm doing this and I'm doing that.
I've been in this,
like, I'm so good. And that really doesn't happen, because we all know how ultimately temporary things are. But it's still such a great community to be part of. Yeah,
for sure. So how did you eventually overcome the adversity of finding yourself not finding jobs? How'd you get out of that discouraged mindset and whatnot?
Well, here's the thing. So, if you land, now I did off Broadway. I auditioned for Broadway and never, I've been on Broadway. I was cast in one Broadway show, which was really exciting. I've auditioned for them, and hey, life's not over yet, right? But it unfortunately closed before it opened, which does happen. But how you get over it, honestly, is by doing what you're doing, Jaelin. I'm so impressed. It's by finding other ways to utilize your gifts and talents. So, okay, no one is casting me right now. That's okay. I'm going to take a killer acting class. That's what I did. But my son is an actor in New York. Thank goodness, with a survival job. But right now he's writing, and he's trying to build a huge following on TikTok. You just make sure you don't lose faith in yourself, and you keep putting yourself out there. You can't, the thing is, this is the other ugly truth. Your competition is doing it. So you got to just be ready when the opportunity comes. So when you're not auditioning, or when it's a slow season, then you make your own opportunity. And I will share with you now, and we had a guest speaker from Nickelodeon. She's the head of casting at Nickelodeon, and she spoke at our Thespian Festival. I can't wait for you to go to Thespian Festival, by the way, Jaelin. At any rate,
for sure. Can't wait.
It's going to be great. But the way the industry is changing, it's always changing. And now you need an agent. If you don't have an agent, you can submit yourself. Start a YouTube channel, do something, but you can absolutely submit yourself for parts. And so Nickelodeon has cast young actors that didn't have agents, but they had, they had their own body of work, and they submitted themselves. And so that's the important thing. The other really important thing is the whole point is, it's a rejection of you, because we are our instrument. So you can't, it's very hard, because, they're rejecting me when I don't get the part. But there's nothing I can do about that. It may be because I was too tall, my hair was the wrong color, whatever, I don't know. But
Yeah.
I do know that for somebody else, I'll nail it and I'll be what they want. So on those in-between times, you just got to not give up, and you've got to stay busy, and just know that the statistics are against all of us always. 90% of professional actors, 90% of professional actors are unemployed at any given time. Of the 10%, Jaelin, that are employed, of those 10% of actors that are employed, 90% of them make far below any livable wage, but you're still so proud, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Just so excited. That's why they call it a starving actor, but it's amazing. And honestly, if you stay in it long enough, you really will make connections and make progress, as long as you're continuing to stay in the game by working on your craft, developing new things, staying busy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for real. So who were three like super like volatile people in staying motivated or actually pursuing acting?
You know what? I had a really amazing coach in high school, this director, and she knew what she was doing, and she invested in me. She helped me with monologues for auditions and stuff, but she told me, you know, she spoke into me that I was talented, you know, and I knew I had a gift, and it was confirmed. And then, I mean, when you land those roles in high school or college, it feeds that dream. And so I think that, there was a director. There's an amazing teacher. She's unfortunately dead now, but her name is Stella Adler. But she's very famous in the world of acting. And so I got to, you know, meet her and be with her. And I had studied her method of acting. I mean, she changed acting in America. So at any rate, I think the important thing is to make sure you have mentors, and that you listen to them and learn from them, and repeat those things that they tell you about you and your talent, so that you know you've got it, and that you don't stop believing in yourself. Because just because there are so many, many, many people that want to do the same thing that you want to do, there's still only one you. And if you can keep your finger on the button longer than anybody else, if you can get knocked down and stand back up, you're going to get cast. You're going to. And the thing is, lots of people give up or get really distracted. But if you've got the eye of the tiger and you don't get distracted, then you're going to make it. But I had dear, supportive friends that spoke into me. And again, I'm sorry, I can't. I think it helps also if your parents believe in you. My parents really encouraged me to go for my dreams. So I would say find mentors that support your dream, and then remember what they tell you. And
for sure. So when did you start directing productions? I know you said like in the 90s, but where was that in kind of your acting journey?
Well, here's the last big thing I did in New York was that I really made substantial money. Anyway, it was around 1996. And so my second child was 6 months old. And so, again, remember I told you about the log ride of life? So everything changed because our first child got a really horrible, horrible disease. And it was an orphan disease, meaning it didn't get any government funding. And at the time, it was considered rapidly fatal. Well, I knew, being a mother was more important to me than acting. Being a mother was the most important thing I'd ever done, although we were working it out so I could still have those moments with my two kids. I was a full-time mom, but I still acted, as I could. But because of that disease, it just changed everything. And so my priority pretty much for the next 6 years was making sure I did everything I could so that my little boy stayed alive. And
Yeah.
that was a time period, I'll tell you. But we also were blessed. We had stair-step children. So even in this heartbreak, and my son is still alive, and he's a wildland firefighter in Northern California. As I speak right now, he is fighting a fire. So, miracles do happen. Wow. Yeah. But that changed the trajectory of my life for that season. I missed it, but I always loved it. But I knew that I needed to focus on being a mother. And so the Lord blessed us with 3 children, and then 4 children, and then 5 children. And so at any rate, and then ultimately 6 children. But as I had kids, that became my priority, and I wanted to pass along my love of theater to them and of acting, because it's the best thing in the world. I mean, it's what I had to offer. So I was homeschooling my children, and because of that, I started directing. I started a theater company where we did Shakespeare. We'd do Shakespeare for children, and then we would travel around and perform it as Shakespeare did, because he was a traveling company, initially. And so I would create the same experience that sort of Shakespeare's company had to a degree with these kids. And so I did it. That's why I did it. I would teach acting and Shakespeare classes to the parents. And then with the kids, I would produce a play, and we'd travel around. We would do it at parks and churches and community centers and stuff like that. And so then part of my strange story, but also my testimony, is that because my first son almost died, just in 6 years I spent in and out of hospitals, I have a special talent, my husband and I, in caring for sick children, shall we say. And so our 5th child, we adopted a medically fragile little baby who's 15 now, but we just felt a calling to do that because it's not a talent that everybody has, I guess. So we adopted this little person, and from a hospital room, I was hired at a school. They wanted a theater program, and they wanted someone that could teach Shakespeare and could do Shakespeare. Wow. So that's how I got that job. And I was fortunate to work at schools that would accommodate my schedule and my children. And as my children grew, they transitioned, they would go to the schools where I taught. But I have to say, amazing. I just want to say the influence, I worked at the Royal National Theater as part of my graduate school curriculum. And there were 2 Broadway directors that also are West End directors at the Royal National. And they spoke into my life profoundly and gave me this amazing acting technique. So it doesn't matter. And then also Playwrights Horizons, a little off-Broadway, 42nd Street Theater. It's just really important that you always keep learning and that you always take risks. And it doesn't matter if man says no. If God says yes, it's going to happen. And so audition for everything. I got a scholarship to those, to the Royal National. Well, that was crazy. I shouldn't have gotten a scholarship. They picked me, I auditioned in Georgia. There were 3 locations in the country, and I was competing against 1 million people, but I got it, and you can get it too. So just know it's not a rejection of you, but there's no reason why you shouldn't avail yourself of every opportunity that you can. And so anyway, that's how I started directing. It was a way to bless my family and to feed the art inside of myself. And I have just gone on from there, and I absolutely am excited to keep going with my directing.
For sure. Yeah. So what were some of the hardest challenges you faced when directing at first, or when you direct now?
Well, theater is heartbreaking. Yeah. And theater, when I'm talking about directing, I don't direct TV or film. The principles are the same. And so, but that's, I direct theater. So theater is really, it's cutthroat and it's heartbreaking in the same way that it's kind and wonderful and loving, but you break people's hearts, and I hate that. but I'm perfectly willing to do it. And so when I do it like I taught at the university level. And so in college, it's like, yeah, this is what it is. Next time, I mean, you cast the show and you move forward. But in academic theater, you can't. It kills you. It stabs your heart. It's horrifying because you're breaking hearts of people that you love deeply. And I can't stand it. So the hardest thing is the whole casting process. Because hearts break during it. And the other thing, so that is very, very hard. And some plays deal with hard material. It was in the fall we did, for example, Diary of Anne Frank. And it was really difficult because, did you go on the field trip to the Museum of Tolerance, Jaelin? Or Mitch, I can't remember. Mitch was
I think I did. Yeah, I believe I was there. Yeah.
60 or 70 kids went with us, but and the Museum of Tolerance is a really powerful experience. And we additionally had 3 or 4 guest artists. We had Holocaust survivors, and we had Anne Frank's father's best friend. And so for the kids, it was very hard not to get so deeply depressed about the characters that they were portraying because, except for one person, in that annex, they died and they didn't die well. And then, so it can be very depressing. And when you're learning to act, you want to immerse yourself so fully in the role that it can be really unhealthy if you don't do it in the right way and in the way. So those are challenges that I find in directing. Is I want to only feed love and confidence into the artists that I work with, but by the nature of the craft is that you can only cast certain people. And again, it's the same thing. It might be height, it might be hair color, it might be, whatever, but it still is heartbreaking if you don't get the role. So I find that, and you have to be, just very patient and loving and in the face of heartbreak and other challenges that students face.
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
For sure. What is like the best thing that you've gotten for yourself, or just kind of like in your head about when you direct? Like, what do you feel like? What's something that makes you feel?
Sorry, my dog is barking. Come here. So sorry.
You're good.
What I really like is the quality of, I like the satisfaction of doing something that is so professional that people come to me and say, I've never seen students do anything like this. This, this was the best show I've ever seen. Or this was, for example, with, I like to change people's lives because that's what art is supposed to do. So I can remember there was a Shakespeare play that I did probably maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And there were some people that just sat in the audience after the show and they were just mesmerized. And anyway, the purpose of what I do is God driven, Jaelin. Anyway, so this person accepted Christ after that show. And the Diary of Anne Frank, there were 2 Holocaust survivors that told me that was the best production of Anne Frank they had ever seen, bar none. One of them, a gentleman, he spoke after the matinee performance, and he works at the Museum of Tolerance. The Museum of Tolerance hosted a professional performance of the Diary of Anne Frank. And he stood there and said, this was far better. This was better than any, and he'd seen it performed in Europe. He'd seen it in New York. I think he said he'd seen more than 50 productions, and our Pacifica production was the best. So that's what means the most to me, is that I know what it takes to get the job done. And when I can share that vision with students who want to jump in with everything they've got, we can create something that is important and life-changing and not a school play. I never want to do a school play, ever.
Mhm.
I love doing theater in its best, finest form. And I've been really blessed to be able to do that.
For sure. So we're just gonna, I was gonna hit you with this like really, really thought-provoking question real quick. How do you think social media has impacted theater or the arts in a positive way and a negative way? Like, what's the impact on that?
Well, I'm excited. That's a wonderful question. Thank you. I'm really, I think it's been an amazing thing in many ways because it's a creation of new forms. And, you know, tragically, Broadway is not right now. I mean, there is no 2020 season for Broadway. And so for theater and for actors, I mean, Broadway is our mecca. Like that's what, you know, I mean, and even the shows on the West Coast, most of them are cast in New York. I mean, you can definitely get roles and stuff. They'll have local auditions, but New York is the apex of the theater world. Sorry, here's my little dog again. So sorry, Peanut, stop. Okay. Come here. So sorry. At any rate, so I think that, like as I said, for my son who's pursuing his acting career with everything he's got, he's 23, and there aren't auditions. They're like the student, you know, there are always student films and there are just always auditions. There are always auditions. That's the great thing about theater, but there aren't now. And so having a YouTube channel or doing TikTok or, you know, even making Instagram your platform, these are all amazing ways to practice your craft. And again, as I said, it can have really good results when you submit yourself for a casting call. I mean, and that's where the world is going now. And I think it's so exciting because it's really hard to get an agent. But now, while you're getting an agent, casting directors are looking at work created on these new media platforms. And so I think that's great. I think that's positive. And then it's exciting to think how we'll use these media platforms on stage and how we'll incorporate. It just is, it's very exciting. And I think it's great. What makes me sad about it and what I think is detrimental is that it was Frederick Douglass who said, a man's character always takes its hue more or less from the form and color of things around him, which means our character is influenced by what we see, hear, touch, feel. And I'm so sad at the degradation of truth and beauty right now. I mean, it's just sad. I think it's just sad. It's sad that students are and not students, it's sad that that we are far more exposed to profanity as a way of regular speaking than we are words of Shakespeare or, you know, lyrics of songs or things that are so powerful. It's sad to me. It's sad to me also that our vocabulary unfortunately in media, in mass media, tends to be really reductive. Like we use 1 and 2 syllable words instead of rich multisyllabic verbiage, creating word pictures. It tends to be really reduced to sometimes simple language, and a lot of the language is not censored anymore. I think that is sad. I think there's not a veil that should be in place separating what should be private and sacred anymore. So how do we celebrate the sacred? What is sacred anymore? These are questions because it's, you know, there is no filter. And then we have to ask ourselves, what is art really? In ancient Rome, they had fabulous plays with elaborate sets. They flooded the Colosseum and built a ship to do a production showing a great naval victory. But the problem was they really killed people. They slaughtered their prisoners of war, and as part of that theatrical performance. And in the same way, I think a lot of what is done now it's not art at all. It's just a way to grab attention for yourself or to promote a message that devalues what it means to be a human being and a person that in a community. Does that make sense? So that's the bad thing. If we all could get on common ground again about building each other up and what really is beautiful, I think it's an amazing thing. And but when it puts stuff out there that isn't good for anybody to watch, does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think we're good on that note. I really appreciate this, taking your time to come on the podcast with me. Really appreciate it. And I think we're good. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I loved being here.
The Climb with Jaelin is hosted by Jaelin Morris-Orchen, produced by Mitch Bahnsen, and the music is done by Bowden Ford. For business inquiries, please contact us at theclimbwithj@gmail.com. That's theclimbwithjae@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.